Happy lunchtime. We are here today with a good friend of mine who has one of the best jobs you could possibly have. Um, no bias. Current mayor of Portsmouth, Deaglan McEachern. Deaglan, so good to see you. How are you today?
I'm great, Steve. Thanks for having me on. As a former mayor, the honorable. Yeah, I think that's the title. But yeah, it's great to be on. Appreciate what you're doing, and hopefully, you told me we get to talk sports the entire time. So looking forward to that as well.
That's what I like to do. First of all, one very specific uh, reason to give you thanks. So I believe this is accurate. Even though I have been an ex-mayor for 18, more than 18 years now, or something like that, 18 years. You are the first mayor, current or former, obviously, who is younger than me.
Oh,
Not at the
yeah.
time, but like
Now
now.
it's time. Yeah. But now, yeah. That's probably the like when you say that you're the mayor, it comes up in casual conversation. Normally, I just bring it up in case people are start to go into a tirade about things they don't like about the city. I want them to know right off the bat that like I'm not going to take offense to it, but I do want you don't walk away and then like saying all this crap to the mayor. So people do are like you're younger than I thought, you'd be. And so I think it skews like all politics in New Hampshire skews much older. I think the mayor gig is something that, it's certainly fun with a young family, as you recall. Well, I think they were like really, really young for you, but it's fun, but it's definitely not something uh, that most people do kind of earlier on in their life. It's just a time consuming. It doesn't pay anything. I mean, it pays. I say I get paid $2,000 an hour, but 1 hour a year. So I have another job. I work in tech, and so like all of those things are fantastic. But like it's if it wasn't for Rory being able to juggle some of this stuff, it just doesn't happen with a young family.
I think one of the advantages, as I tell younger folks, people with kids at home that are thinking about running for, they want to get involved in elected office, is that local often is your best shot to be able to get the life work balance, if for no other reason but the lack of a commute for the most part.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're not driving, I mean, for us on the seacoast, 45 to 60 minutes, depending where you are, to get to Concord. And for you, it's 5 minutes as long as construction is going okay.
As long as construction, yeah. I was saying before we went live that I was irritated again by the decisions that I have approved from a construction standpoint, and that if I'm irritated, I can only imagine how many other people are just furious with construction season beginning in earnest here. But yeah, I think that there's two things to the local level. One, no commute, but two, like I think if you like getting things done, you get to see those things get done. I think politics, for better or worse, like on the state and the national level, are like these ideological pursuits that people are fighting good and evil, and everybody thinks they're on the good side or the evil side, or nobody thinks they're on the evil side. But on the local level, it's like, okay, we have a limited amount of money. How are we going to spend it? How are we going to invest it? Like, how are we going to improve, our lives? The kids, our the lives of our children. That's a very rewarding thing in and of itself. Like if you are feeling crappy, go help somebody. And in this role, regardless of whether or not like people agree, I am trying to help. And so like it's definitely a feeling where there's a lot of reward to that, and you get to see. I think a lot of times people just want agency in their life, and this is definitely, you don't have to be mayor, you don't have to be a counselor. You could, if there are people watching in Portsmouth, we need people for the zoning board of adjustment. It's a 5-year term,
Oh
but
my
like
God.
there's a lot of ways that you can get involved. And so like I think that's the I think but I just ask, and I know I'm talking too much for this podcast thing, this
That's
interview,
right.
but um, don't come with an agenda other than to help. Like I think that you see people in politics, they get into politics for a cause, and either they get that cause done or they don't, and they're out. I think if you come kind of just like without an ideological bent and you're just like, I want to help, I want to do things, like I don't necessarily have all like the strongest opinions. I have some morals and some a touchstone, but like I don't necessarily have all the ideas. The people with all the ideas, they come in, they either get it done and they're gone, or they flame out and they don't get it done, and it's the system's fault. And so it could just be that nobody else liked that idea, but like, and so like being able to like balance that, if you want to help and serve and feel like you got to pay your rent on earth, get involved local level.
Well, I mean, you first got elected locally in 2019, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And welcome, right? I mean, you talk about, if even if you were somebody wired to have a specific agenda, and that's not even a like, here's my
Yeah,
issue, here's my rant,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then reality hit 3 months in, and everything else became not even secondary, became non-existent overnight. What was that like? You were a counselor at that time. You weren't mayor yet. You were a counselor, and all of you are getting hit with this once in a century catastrophe. What was that like now with 5 years of hindsight?
It's crazy to think it's been 5 years, and we're still coming out of it. Like when we look at the data in terms of schools, still coming out of that, and you see it like early interventions didn't happen that should have happened. I think the thing that it wasn't, it's not squandered, but like I just felt like there was a sense of like we're all in it together, and that lasted for like when we were ringing. I remember ringing bells for frontline workers, nurses, things like that. I remember like hitting pots and pans, and then like there was it seemed like the goalposts move a lot, especially with education. We lost a lot of people that believed in Democrats regarding education, like around that time period. That was a shift, but I would say that like it's like most things. You have an idea of how your life is going to play out, and then your decisions usually happen to you instead of you making them. Like COVID was one of those things that happened to all of us, and how we responded in that. Portsmouth, we did well enough through that. I think I was proud that me and the assistant mayor at the time, Jim Splain, recognized the limits of government very, very, very. There's government is not made to move fast. It's made to make decisions with consensus. That's great, but like with COVID happening, so we had this COVID response task force where like we got like government out of the way. We put like businesses, we put like volunteer committees or nonprofits. We put them on a task force. They met all of the time, and they were able to like come up with rules for like outdoor dining, things that would have literally never happened in Portsmouth. People love it. It would never happen now. Like in the sense of like now we can never take it away, but like all of those things moving fast. Like that was my that was my big takeaway, is that government doesn't necessarily move as fast as it needs to when when it comes to things like you know um, exogenic shocks to the system, like COVID. That was something else.
When you look back, you said it a moment ago, the impact on education, and I think there's a part of being an effective local or any level elected official is an element of humility.
Sure.
Embrace when you got it right with some
Yeah.
luck and some skill, and then nobody gets it right all the time. Unfortunately, on some pretty important things, sometimes you learn things later. This was true with COVID itself, right? There were things we learned, but in education, we look back, um, and it does seem like that may have been the single biggest long-term impact in terms of
Yeah.
public policy.
I mean, we're still getting through it in terms of like the kids that are graduating, next week. It was just a huge shock. And then like from like there's all these things that happen in education that you don't realize. I think, well, you don't realize that when you're getting educated for sure. But like when you're a parent, and you see like the things that are happening, like the interventions for like kids that like if they just had like a para in second grade, got them kind of like the bumper lanes a little bit, and got them on the straight and narrow. They don't need that that larger intervention in middle school, and they don't need to be placed out of district in high school. We have like one result is we have our out of district budget went up by 50% this year. Like in some ways, I feel like that's tied to the fact that those early interventions didn't happen early enough. But then I think we just lost a little bit of uh, the the online like I think when like the hardest thing to do in government is make decisions that affect everyone, because they're not going to affect everyone equally. When I'm sitting there with my kid wearing a mask in kindergarten and she's chewing through it, like I understand like the things that like are important, and we make rules for all of the folks, but it was a difficult thing, and I think that it showed just a limit of rulemaking in government, that like you can't like make it like all of those things, and we have trust, or we have regulation, and we kind of defaulted to regulation in that point. Like you can only choose one path: the trusted society or the regulated society. And because of like what we thought of in terms of the effects of COVID, and like like I remember trying to keep my dad alive while I was going to cancer treatments. Like, don't get him sick with COVID. Like that
Wow.
was very real. Like, but like it was also very hard in the schools as it kind of dragged on, and that was really difficult. And I don't know, like we don't get to do that one over, and I'm sure like like we won't have another pandemic for another 90 years, but like those people will have forgotten all the things that we learned after the fact, and I'm sure the Spanish influenza learned and forgot, and that's the limit of being human, I suppose.
The and when I look at even today, current legislation up in Concord is, and at the national level last fall, there's some work that I do when I'm presenting to largely Democratic groups that shows the trust surplus or deficit that one party has over the other on a variety of issues. And one of the places where, if you look over the last 5 to 10 years, Democrats had the trust advantage,
Sure.
net trust, and that we're now in a bit of a deficit, is education. And when I look at some of the bills in Concord right now, like the education freedom accounts, right, that are a school voucher, effectively a school voucher, that part of why I think they are getting through, frankly, a little more easily in terms of public opinion than I might have guessed 2 or 3 years ago, is related to this trust deficit that, if you want to be cynical, that proponents of the voucher program are timing pretty well to exploit this trust deficit to
Sure.
say,
I mean,
hey, do it ourselves.
they've been trying that forever. So like that, they have an opportunity. Means they timed it, but they're always pushing that. These this freedom accounts or school choice. I mean, those schools can choose not to accept kids. You know, and they can always choose. Like, and we're paying. Like, just as a reminder to folks that say, well, these schools, they're trying to be more efficient. We still, as Portsmouth, will pay for their special education costs there. So like that's also like, it's not like there's some magical thing like a school that's run that doesn't have to serve every kid and doesn't pay special needs. Like I bet there's some efficiencies there, but like our goal in education, at least as we have it in New Hampshire, is to educate every child, because we believe it's a constitutional right to education here in New Hampshire. And I we have lost trust, and COVID's part of it. I also just think that like educate like the whole thing with government is it has to do things, like it has to produce like actual results. And so like if you're graduating high school and you're being told that you have to go to college to get an education, and that is like exorbitantly expensive, like you would be okay to start asking some questions on like, what am I getting out of all of this? Like, what are my taxes? And the taxes, they just keep going up because like it turns out like when we have a decline in school population, it's not like Mrs. Littmeyer's third grade class moved to Massachusetts. It's like, we got 2 kids here, 3 kids there. And, like the cost to educate is still the same. The building, the heating, the teachers, like we might save some money on some paras, but like the cost is fixed. And so like, and it goes up for cost of living adjustments. That's the whole kind of gig with public sector employees. So like, we have to look at education, and it's on Democrats as well as Republicans to say like, hey, how are we going to make sure that kids can graduate and go get a job? Because like I think that most people are surprised that maybe listening to your podcast that like 2/3 of folks still don't go to a 4-year college. Like here in America, like it's a third, a little bit higher in New Hampshire, but like like I bet that's like not like the people that are on the staffers for campaigns. Like I bet they would be shocked. Like, oh, it must be like 60% by now. No, it's not. And so like like being able to focus on things, and like we got to make sure that like everybody sees the value out of education, and that if it goes away, they will feel it. The state, these vouchers, instead they're going back to the donor towns, instead of like and instead and spending the money on the vouchers, because they spent the money on the vouchers, and they cut the revenue on the capital gains tax. And it sounds just like they're doing down in DC, except like we can't run like a budget deficit like that. So like there's no money printing machine in New Hampshire that's going to be able to save the day. And so like those are very real things that they're just like they inherited those problems based on the last 8 years of Republican leadership, and like we're kind of seeing what that's going to be now.
I mean, when you mentioned that divide on educational attainment, that you're, I mean, New Hampshire's a little more highly educated on average
Yeah.
than most states, so maybe it's a 60-40 split. But nationally, it's almost 2/3 of Americans don't have a college degree, 4-year degree, and Republicans right now are eating Democrats' lunch among folks that don't have a college degree. I'll go into an event, let's say 40, 50 people, and we'll get to this topic, and I'll say, how many of you here have a 4-year undergraduate degree or higher? And it's 80 to 90%. Sometimes it's virtually the whole room.
Yeah.
Now it's self-selected. You're not going to show up on a Wednesday night in Bristol,
No.
New Hampshire to talk politics unless you're kind of into it. But then you realize how far, even among our most sophisticated activists, Democrats often are, at being able to understand from a lived experience perspective why somebody would say, listen, I'm pro choice. I believe climate change is real. I believe in equality. I believe in democracy and all of it. But man, I'm really worried about
The
nuts and
economy.
bolts.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the economy, my life, like I think my opinion was formed kind of early on this when I used to be, a rower. That was another illustrious career where I earned hundreds of dollars a year. And I remember going to I was down in Jersey. That's where the training center was. And there was this great grocery store called Wegmans. And Wegmans, there was a sign on the egg section, and it said, and this was a pretty wealthy place where we were staying with host families. That means the house is big enough to also like house and feed rowers, who were large, it wasn't
Pretty
sitting on
hungry, yeah.
the sofa, and eating a ton. And so like the idea, like we go into Wegmans, and there was this sign on the egg case, and it was like, we've heard your feedback that you only want us to carry free range eggs. And while we appreciate that, we have to, serve all of our customers, and many can't afford, the free range. And so we provide a lower cost option, a great protein source for those. Please choose as you wish, and like, I think that a lot of times when we try to do something on the national level, it's like we got to, or even on the local state level, we try to do it, even if it's more expensive, it's going to add costs, And so I was proud here in Portsmouth when we did the community power, we were very adamant. It had to do two things. It had to have, a totally green option, and the totally non-green option had to be cheaper than what you were paying through, Eversource or Unitel. Like,
Yep.
to be able to say like, hey, you get a choice, because the idea that we are going to make decisions for people, and even if they can't afford that, many people can, and they should, but like, if you can't afford that, like, we can't say like, hey, your only way to be a Democrat is self-sacrificial. Like, that is a terrible place to be as a party. Like, you have to provide a better alternative. And yes, there are some, regulations that we have to have, but this idea that like we know better than everybody else, like that's a losing strategy. When people do pay attention, it's just like, I'm being told that I should feel bad about these decisions that I'm making, and that I have to make them regardless. That's just a tougher place, especially I think in New Hampshire, with the live free or die attitude, and definitely in America, with this rugged individualism. Whether or not it was ever true, like, we believe it now. And so like, it's the idea that you have to give people choices, and it's tougher to just tell them what to do. And I think, we can be a little bit more nuanced with that, and just like put the options out.
The word, I read a story about a recent focus group where asking for adjectives to describe the two brands, the two parties. And one of the most common words that was used for Democrats today was judgmental and scolding.
Hmm.
And which kind of feeds is if
Yeah.
we're not careful, yeah, yes, you're going to pay more, but it's for your own good.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
difficult
It's,
message.
yeah, it's just, it's difficult to, yeah, I think that there are a lot of ways that we can try to improve government, like housing. We can make it easier to build housing. We can make it less, costly to build housing. But if we're, it's a, I think the hard part, and I'm always like my brother was a Marine. He said, "Dig, these walkie-talkies are push to talk, not push to think." So I get in trouble when I think out loud. But I do think that there is um, it matters what government does, and it's not like, oh, if everybody just agreed with us, then the world will be perfect. It's like, well, there's a lot of people with competing priorities on the local level, like my God, like, it's hard to tell who's a Democrat and who's a Republican when it comes to housing, or even like
Yes.
solar panels, like solar panels, like, well, not in the HDC. Like, it's like, okay, well, this is it's a asphalt roof. Asphalt shingles were created, around the same time as like the first photovoltaic, conductive panels. And so like, 100 years or so. And it's really hard, um, eh, to get things done. And I think, if we just focused on getting things done instead of getting people to agree with us, or feel better about themselves by doing that. I think that there is something to be said for this idea that the Democratic Party has become the party of feelings, and like improving people's feelings and not improving people's lives. Like that's a very
Hmm.
I think it's a distinction with a difference, that it's not just about feeling good about the policy. It's not just saying we're going to have you know no no gas cars by 2030. It's like making the investments, and then it's just like electric cars are probably going to win, definitely going to win long term, but it's like you got to make some investments. You can't just say, hey, you're not going to have these gas powered jalopies here. Like, you got to like make it easier for folks. And that's the thing where I think we sometimes just try to, I don't know if it's shame or tell people what to do. That's not, that's never going to fly.
It's not going to fly. Something you mentioned, you touched on a moment ago, and I certainly see it as a prominent issue in Portsmouth, but really it's state and national, is housing.
Hmm.
And I live in Northampton now, and am one of these, bucolic small towns around Portsmouth that so much of the economic activity, the reason people move to the area, is directly or indirectly related to Portsmouth, and to some
Oh,
extent even Boston and so forth. You're the when you catch a cold, when you sneeze, these towns catch an economic cold, and vice versa. And
yeah, yeah.
so one of the things is I find the council, there'll be criticism about more housing, and then other folks. And again, this is not party lines. I'm amazed at how non/slash bipartisan some of these debate lines are. Folks that are saying you're doing too much on housing, others that are like, hey, look, the prices are too high, clearly not enough. Meanwhile, most of us towns around you, relatively speaking, doing a lot less on housing than Portsmouth.
Oh, not relatively. It's just, it's like, yeah,
Absolutely,
it's
yes.
definitely. So like, yeah, Portsmouth is growing faster than any community in New Hampshire based on the amount of stock we're adding as a percentage. And so like, it's 1%, and it's been 1%, for the last 4 or 5 years now. COVID kind of, a little bit, held that back, but it's still like it's going a lot. I think that the issue with housing, and it's great. It's like the shooting match is like, you know, housing, like us building housing is not going to benefit like as much as like there's tangential benefits and there's tax relief benefits in terms of like all of the things that come along with increasing the property value, total value of Portsmouth. But like, if you live here, like having more housing doesn't necessarily help you. Like, it doesn't necessarily, like, it's not going to necessarily be like, oh, like we are, like, oh, I wanted to, maybe if you wanted to downsize, and like there's definite areas. I think it's mostly traffic. People hate it. I don't know one person that loves traffic. I don't know one person, myself included, that loves, like watching a building go up. But like, you have a short memory when it's up. And so like in the local level, yeah, we have to, like, one, people have property rights, and so they're going to do that. Two, if we don't build and we stop all building, we don't technically have the ability to have moratoriums as people think, but like that doesn't happen. But like, it's going to make the situation worse. What we're trying to do, because everybody, I think, dislikes the type of housing we're building. It's, very expensive housing. It's rich condos, or hotels. And they're like, why do we need more hotels? And I'm like, have you ever had somebody try to like come to visit you in the summertime? It's like $400 to $500 a night. Like they're
Yes.
making money, guys. Like, so like there's going to be more hotels unless it's, but like the idea that like, if we could figure out how to get more affordable housing. Now, like we're not going to have like the PHA or other nonprofit developers aren't going to build enough to solve that. And so we have to figure out how the market's going to play. Was excited what we did with a new zoning initiative, and now your listeners are going to fall asleep, but just hang with me for 2 seconds. The problem when we have housing tied into the idea of like a developer is going to build the affordable housing, they're not good affordable housing developers. Like they don't do that, and then you got to manage that. So we figured out a way that we're going to get that land up front, and then we're going to pass that land over to other entities that can build it. And there is a lot of desire. I think in Portsmouth, uniquely because we're not getting the pressure on the schools, we're actually down in schools.
Right.
Like that's one thing. Two, a lot of people that are from here remember it as more economically diverse, and they want like the idea of like let's have some economic diversity. That's what made Portsmouth a great place. That's what we need to try to hold on to. That's what we need to incentivize. And so we've been lucky in those ways to try to create avenues for affordable housing. I think the state should start looking at all like there's like the DOT holds on to all this land across like next to every highway as if they're going to like somehow expand that to a 12-lane highway one day. Like start giving some of those to the housing authorities, start giving it to the cities and towns. Let's start building on some of the state land where there is housing availability to have, and it's already connected. So there has to be a little bit more outside the box thinking on the state level. But this idea that we're going to educate boards to know what to do when it comes to housing. They know what they're doing. Like they're no dummies. Like like they know like exactly the type of zoning they're making it limited, and that's we get to solve that on the state level or not. But like I just wish it was more tied to like what you're doing is the investment you're getting back from the state.
Do you find it's harder to get, I don't even mean quality people, but to get applicants for land use boards because the stakes are getting higher, both literally from a financial point of view, and the attention seems to only be growing on them?
Yeah, I think this ZBA and so like again, man, we've gotten into Steve. We've managed to talk about the most boring things ever, but like the zoning board of adjustment. It's a 5-year term, and in like we're about to do our master plan, but because we haven't, the zoning board is like basically a planning board unto itself because our zoning is so it's like 10 years old. We're like you're mandated to do it every 10 years. We're about to kick that, or the planning board's about to kick that project off, but with the ZBA, they're like, well, this kind of conforms, this doesn't kind of conform, and so you have like a neighborhood, come out and be like, I hate this type of house. It's like, okay, well, they
Yes.
should be allowed to do this, and so I think it is more contentious, and this idea that like, somebody's like, yeah, one, it's a lot of time, and two, like when you get into the details, it's tough to it's just tougher to make decisions when you actually know the facts. It's a lot easier to make decisions based on headlines, and so like once you get in there, like it's like, oh man, this person has a right to do this. And the other thing with like everybody thinks developers have like like they got everybody on the take. It's just like you would be really good at building your second house, like just like people like only build one. Like I got a variance for my deck. It was the hardest thing that I did. I'm the mayor. I know what to do now. But like it's just knowing the rules. And so the rules are tough. And I think people just feel like, they're busy and they don't necessarily see the impact on their lives and how they're going to make a difference. And it is one big way, but it's also a lot of anger out there, Steve. A lot of anger. Like people are just yeah, they. It's like I'm going to talk about sports here because it's like politics has become like you're rooting for a team, like
Yep.
and it's not like it's like and it's not even you got like you got Doris on the NBA national TV broadcast. You got like Brian Scalabrine, and like he's the guy you're listening to. And for some of your listeners, he's a former player, love him to pieces, the White Mamba. He's the color commentator for the Boston Celtics. Like everybody just listens to their own Brian Scalabrine. Like and like that's how they get the facts. Was it a foul? Of course it wasn't a foul. Jason would never do that. And so like when we're like, we have these different viewpoints where we're coming from, and I think it's hard to like bridge that divide. We're lucky in Portsmouth in that it's nonpartisan, and so it's just different divides that we create. But like, I think that it's a real chilling effect on civil discourse and civil engagement.
Well, and to that point, especially at the state level, as we've seen the collapse of daily newspapers
Sure, yeah.
and local talk radio. I mean, there's even that within New Hampshire. There used to be some reliable local, mainly drive time morning talk radio, and most of that is gone. The financial structure for being able to break even on that is gone, and so we have not seen, it seems, as fast, certainly at the state level, a replacement of that with I guess what would be the podcasts and other digital platforms. They take little bits of it, but we haven't seen a lot of that in New Hampshire on the political front, which provides an opportunity. But it is true that the silo, I hear from other friends of mine in other parts of the state, local government, they feel the nationalization
Oh
of
yeah.
issues coming on down to the aldermanic or city council level now.
Yeah, I mean, some of that, like we had some of that come up, and we just said it was non-germane to, the what we're trying to do here. Like, I think that everybody wants everybody to be like um, pure in some sense. They want us to take positions on literally everything, and like, there's some inextricable issues that like we're not going to solve like on the city level. I would argue that they're not getting solved on the state level. I would rather focus on the things that because I think what people don't necessarily recognize, and it's a good reminder, all the time, you have a limited amount of things that you can do. Like, not just like, like there's time in the day, but it's also like if you piss people off enough, and sometimes you have to make decisions that are going to piss people off. If you just keep doing that, if you take on all the fights that you, one, can't solve, and two, aren't solvable, like maybe, like it's difficult to to take on those. I would rather focus on the things that we're actually going to get some sort of consensus around reasonable people. I listen, and my door's open to everybody, when we're talking, and I have some great exchanges with some MAGA folks in Portsmouth that send me every article under the sun of how I'm messing up, and I'm like, well, I don't know about this, and I respond, because if not for my one email, maybe there's nothing else in the echo chamber there, and people do the same thing to me, and I appreciate that, but like, you have to be you have to be willing to actually focus on the things where we can get people to actually do something. And I think like you have to be optimistic. Like, this is a job that you can't be pessimistic on, and you have to be realistic. Like, realistic on what you're actually going to get done. Like, because I'm always trying to be just like, if somebody has something to say about me, like I could say I was a bad decision, or like I missed something, but as long as I say I was reasonable. Like, that's the goal, is just to be a reasonable person, because at the end of the day, everybody in Portsmouth knows they're not going to watch every council meeting. They're not going to, or any council meeting. They expect us to be smart people that are doing hard work, that aren't on the take, and that are reasonable, that would make a decision that they would be like, oh yeah, I see the point, like, and that's the job.
I
Not to
think
be
that's
an
a great way of
ideologue.
looking at it. It's a very, I mean, this is a very practical level of government, right? The old saying, there's no partisan way to fill a pothole kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think that that's on the, it should be like, I think on the state level, you look at like where people have been successful on the state level. And I think that most people, like, look at Sununu, like people, like, regardless of whether or not you thought he was good or bad, I think most people think he at least came off as reasonable. Like, the trick that he would always do is, he would do the really outrageous things, quietly, and do the things that were very, like, like the pee before we go, the amount of times I saw like that license plate, that he saved the license plate for the lady for pee before we go. Like, he was good at figuring out those things. I think that like sometimes you gotta, um, just the limits of what, like, and that's tough because you got 400 people in the house, so you got like people that go there, and it's a big family reunion, and so you got to get people that are looking for just doing good work instead of like doing their pet project, and that's something that like I just wish that I think it would do better if um, and this is like totally my lens of looking at it, but like if you thought like, hey, how do I improve people's lives like in my community? I know this is some kind of crazy idea, but like I think the problems we have on the national level for like, Congress, Pappas has done a great job in terms of actually being a person that's, not just like he's not a Democrat, like he's a Democrat, but like I think that most people like appreciate his constituent service. The idea that like most of Congress is just to go down and be an extension of the executive branch, where you're just going to vote the party line and not ever push back. Like you got to push back on your friends. Like that's how they're your friends. Like you tell them like when they're wrong, and we have really none of that in politics. It's more like, hey, we're gonna crowd around, and if we all, just say the emperor has clothes, like the emperor has clothes, and that's not a way to get the reasonable people to come out and support you.
Well, I mean, even at the state legislative level, as you note, 400 members. Spent a lot of my time on analysis with that the last few years, and one of the things that's becoming more and more clear is what I would describe as the parliamentization of
Mm,
the state legislature, where one might argue the fact there are so many seats representing so few people per seat might mean there's this personal connection. Yeah, you're representing 3,400 people. Hey,
yeah,
but what appears to be happening is it becomes less and less of a let me compare the issues, let me compare the biographies of the candidates, and it's basically become, as I tell folks, it appears less and less as a Democrat when they talk about who should we recruit for the legislature. I said increasingly it's becoming less about your legislative record, and I'm caring more about your medical record because the attendance and who
yeah,
shows up on, especially in these years where we have a tight divide, it really comes down a lot of days to which party has a higher percentage of their people literally show up and avoid a swig of the flu or a snowstorm or whatever,
yeah.
and that feels much more like a parliamentary system than what you're talking about, which is
Well,
where
I'm
we want
glad you.
things to be.
I mean, not for me. I knew what you meant by parliamentary system, but for all the viewers, I'm glad you explained that. So, like, just now we can have a conversation. Totally got what you're talking about
Oh
before. But
yeah,
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 I
right. I
think
mean,
the, I think it's there's a lot, and they're not paid well, so they can't do it full time. So it's it tends to be older, it tends to be people that can afford to do it, tends to people who have a passion project, appreciate that they're doing it. But I think that the idea, like what you get, I think very and I'm what I really got like really kind of pissed about is I was watching some of the the more conservative saying, like, oh, who knows, like what they're like what are we going to have these towns like take votes, and decide our future, and not like some of the zoning stuff I can get behind. We've been supportive of some of those broader changes, and like Martha Fuller Clark was somebody that did the ADUs, and they've paid off in terms of people being able to build those, and that was state overriding local control. But this idea that somehow, like, because you're elected, on the like when we have the national elections and not on the local level, somehow you understand what's going on in your community better. Like, I think that's just like a crock of shit. Like, I think the idea that like there's like here, like in the local level, people that come out for local elections like are paying attention, like they understand what they're doing, they're voting on issues that they care about. Like the idea that you're riding the coattails of the national party and somehow like you're going to tell everybody in this area that better than all of them, and you're going to try to make it harder for them to have a voice, seems like just like absolutely crazy to me. And this idea that like somehow the state is something that serves itself, like instead of serve the people, is asinine. Like my job, I have 23,000 bosses. Like I serve the city of Portsmouth. Like, and I never forget that ever one day of the year. Like my job isn't to tell people what to do. It's to give my opinion, certainly, to make sure that the city continues to run. But like nobody comes to the city of the open door to speak at public comment. They come for the restaurateurs. They come for the beautiful, historic, scenery. They come for, the shopping. They come for all these things. They don't come for me. And I think on the state level, they think of themselves as so important that they forgot who they're actually serving. They're serving the people. Like, we are a subdivision of the state, but the amount of times I've been reminded that only our authority comes through the state, like, get out of here, man. Like, your authority comes through the people that you represent and not the other way around. And like, we've been allowing that to happen. And I think it just happens because nobody has the time to pay attention because they're busy. There's no real media that covers it, and they expect people to do a good job. They don't expect people, like, they don't expect Concord to run out of money because they cut all these revenue sources and they spent all this money. Like, nobody, like, like, people find out that like, the budget for the arts is $1 now, where it was, like, actually supporting local programs where people were getting, like, either was seniors or if it was, like, after school programs, and that just, like, is not, being funded anymore. People are going to be pissed. And it was a total avoidable. Like, we had a great situation up there and they could have avoided it, and they're not. And I think it's because they're just they're too full of themselves, like, full stop. Like, I think they just care about themselves and what their projects are too much.
The thing, within a month of each other, the same people, largely, mainly Republicans, who said we need to eliminate the income limits that allow you to be eligible for the school voucher, because that's not fair. And then say within a month that we really need to start putting income eligibility where you have to start paying more for the Medicaid benefits. So
Oh,
if
yeah.
if you're making 150 grand a year, no problem. Like, you should not be limited. If you want that voucher to send your kid to private school, go ahead and do it. That's what fairness is. But a family of four making like 25 grand a year, you really need to start paying in. And,
Yeah,
and these are coming from the same mouths.
it's, there's a lot of, like, I think the biggest problem with it's a Democrat and Republican skewing, more wealthy, having the time to go up there. You forget, like, um, there's a lot of people in New Hampshire that need the state for more than just a license plate. Like, they need, like, actual services that the state provides. Like, I see it all the time. People, like, literally on the phone crying, "I wish I could make, more housing tomorrow." We help them get in wait lists. We help them through welfare. We help them figure those things out. But, like, the idea that, like, nobody, like, I think it's when you're out of touch with that. Like, I had a really close friend. Like, she's been looking for work, for longer than she expected to. If her kids weren't on Medicaid because of that, like, she would be in a real tough bind. Like, the idea that, like, they're going to, somehow make that so that you have to have, more, like, it's a really frustrating thing that people, like, we don't do a lot, in New Hampshire, for the poor. What we do, the idea is that those are the things that are going to be first cut. Kind of hard to stomach when we're talking about giving mostly, the vouchers, like, are people that have already decided to move their children out of school, and this is going to be, fed back to them. And again, I have a problem because those schools, they already get our money and they can say no to anybody they want. And so, like, those are the things that I think that and it's when, not if, people in New Hampshire realize what has happened and the government that has been cut is government actually people miss, and not efficiency. Like, there's going to be problems. Like, if you want to, like, we have a rule in Portsmouth now. If you want to add a regulation, you got to remove two. It's super easy to add rules. It's kind of like you got to go the same process to remove them. Like, it's hard to remove rules. If you want a more efficient government, like, make less rules that we're actually enforcing. Like, that's how you do it. Because otherwise, you just have a really crappy government that doesn't have staff to enforce all the rules that you have. That is not the way to actually lower taxes. Like, if you want lower taxes, lower spend, you actually have to look at things like, what are we actually using this money for? And it's usually to implement rules that somebody put in, 13 years ago, and then it's kind of just a part of the administrative malaise there. You have to actually try to take those rules out. And I don't see Concord, like, taking a bunch of rules out. Like, I just see them, downshifting costs and, like, hoping the DCOYF thing is going to go away. Where I don't think it is. The court cases are going to come down on education funding, which I think they're probably going to say that we need to fund more than $4 grand a year, and that's going to be upheld. And there's just going to be a lot that they haven't prepared for. And when voters, go to the polls, I think they're going to be a little bit more upset than they're expecting, and they're going to look at decisions that were made and been like, "You weren't thinking about us." like you were thinking about something else, some ideological crap that like we reject here in New Hampshire. We want you to be independent thinkers and not mouthpieces for national parties.
So speaking of politics, obviously, odd
Speaking of
numbered
politics,
year, right?
yeah.
Odd numbered year. You got local elections this November. I'm not going to try to put you on the spot too much here. And next year, it's already 2026 in some races, right? I mean, Chris Pappas is already announced for U.S. Senate. Um, Maura Sullivan for Congress. It sounds like former city councilor, among many other things. Stephanie Shaheen looks like she may be imminent in the race here in the days or weeks to come, and many others it looks like may be jumping in. Um, are you thinking about your political future in a 2025 or 2026 context? Do you have any breaking news for us?
No breaking news. Sorry. I mean, I'm trying to get through the budget, and what I found out, and so like I've ruled out Congress for sure. It's not a time in my life to do it. Also, like Stephanie would be great. Like there's people that could do the gig and do it with representing New Hampshire well. For me, like it's the idea that I would somehow like if you think the commute to Concord's bad, like the commute to DC, I heard a little bit longer. And so like I have a 4-year-old and 8-year-old. Like I want to be there for like them, like going to sports and being a dad. And that's not something that And I say that as somebody that jumped in because I felt like 6 years ago or 8 years ago, nobody understood how the internet worked, and I couldn't believe that like people were asking Zuckerberg like how like the internet worked, and feel like we got to actually get ahead of these technological changes. While that's still true, like it's gonna other people are gonna take that mantle. It's not something that's for me for a council and stuff, closer to home. Like I just try to get through the budget. And when I get through the budget, I'm going to look at like what we've done. And I stopped, and I don't know, it's freeing when you just stop thinking about like them as chess pieces that you're moving around. I'm like, I got to do this or I got to do that. I'm super happy with what I'm doing. We'll see if we get through the budget. And, I don't try to think of like what's the next thing to do. I found that life is a lot more enjoyable if you just do the thing that you're doing well. And if other things, if I'm needed in other ways, sure, I'll think about it. But like right now, like just trying to like, I'm definitely needed here in Portsmouth. Got to get through a budget. I'm needed as a dad, and a husband, and I consider a friend, to people, and after that, who knows? Longest non-answer you're going to have on this program, Steve, but like we got a
That's
budget.
okay. You ran for Congress in 18. Uh, I have learned from my own races that you learn so much in victory and also in defeat, it turns out. So we may have in this, it's the first time the first CD is open since that race, right? That was when Carol Shea Porter retired. And we ended up with, I think, 11 people eventually running in that 2018 race, although Chris and Maura ended up sort of
Sure,
getting
yeah.
dominant amounts. We may or may not have, at least to begin with, a pretty sprawling field again. What general advice, as somebody who
Oh,
went through it, like what would you tell somebody, whether they're starting off in a relatively strong position or they're not well known at all and they're never run for anything much big like that before? What would you tell What would you tell you
this is going to
now
sound like
from back then?
complete BS, but what I tell you is be yourself. And I know like every cat poster on there is, and every like inspiration, but like be yourself, and like don't try to be something that you're not. Don't try to like run and try to figure out like where's the angle. Like if the voters respond to you for being yourself, you're going to have a lot, like the money that you spend to get your message out is going to be much more effective. Like if you're trying to be something else, if you're trying to like triangulate like what do you think the things are, like that's going to suck and you're going to hate it. And I'm not saying that I wasn't myself, but I spent a lot of time trying to figure out like how do you how could I win instead of like which was not happening. And so like I think if you
I hear
just
you,
say like,
brother.
hey, like if you recognize your job as a candidate is to get an idea out there, and if you have an idea worth running on, go out and run on it. Get that idea out there. Make sure that people understand like what you're doing. But like remember that it's not about you. It's about like the the people. Like they're like actually the most important part of this whole thing. Like they're the boss, the citizens. It means something. I know it's trite, but like, treat them with respect. Like, have fun. Uh, get up to see the state. Like if you're running for CD1, you'll get to see parts of your state. Like you'll recognize that like New Hampshire isn't a seaside village that likes lobster rolls. There's like some other things. There's some other things going on. And so like when you do that, I think you'll have a good time and you'll get people excited and engaged, and you'll not regret it. You might be like, oh, I probably could have gotten all I was going to get out without actually filing, because you start running in November. You don't have to file till a little bit later, but like,
Oh yeah.
you'll enjoy it, and it will be a lot of memories. Try to write things down, and yeah, just go out and have fun.
The best my experience was, if when you realize it's a people business and you love, if and it's one way to tell whether or not it's the kind of thing that you should be doing. If you love the process of kind of diving into people, learning about their life, answering their questions, getting back and forth, a little debate, like just learning a lot and having fun with people, then the worst case scenario, which is what I've discovered in my own experiences, you make a lot of friends, you become wiser, and that allows you in whatever your civic life is later, elected, not elected, whatever, you'll be better at it. You're just like
Oh
so
yeah.
much better at it.
Yeah, I think, and you'll be better at because you'll know more people. Like you'll know like not because you'll have like more connections, but you'll just get to see other people's like, like there'll be people that go there and there'll be, the same people at some of the events that you've been to like before, but you'll go out, knocking on doors or talking to people and you'll get to see a different perspective. And I think as long as you're curious and you enjoy that sort of thing, yeah, again, like probably not best to be an introvert to do that, but like if you get energized by it, you'll have a really good time. But don't, like it's your job to get an idea out there. And if you get that idea out there, then great. But like, it's not something that you might not be the guy, you might not be the gal, and don't take that so hard. Like,
Yep.
like it's just something that like people want a lot of things and, their candidate, and you might not be that, and that's okay. Like, go out and don't take yourself too seriously, but take the process seriously, and you'll have fun.
So, since you're not running for Congress or anything like that, um, do you have we talk about sports from time to time. We love sports. I'm doing a sports podcast as well, but the worlds collide a lot. What is your sport of choice? If there's one sport on TV for you, what is that sport?
Well, I think everybody's answer like has to be football, because like
Yep.
the idea that like it's, when the Patriots are playing well and Vrabel's going to get us back and like we're favored in 11 games, like that's crazy to think like we're favored in 11 games. Like and Drake May, like like um, it's like a whole like it sets up your week. I will say though, like the Celtics for me edge out, the other. I
Yep.
love the Celtics, and it was a tough year this year. Like, maybe Tatum, like, and White and Drew should not have gone to the Olympics. Like that maybe was like the thing that like it was a little bit too much. Like, KP looked like he like was smoking cigarettes out there. Like I don't
Oh
know.
my
Like,
God.
but like it was tough to. It was such a whop. But like that team is a lot of fun, and it was just. I love, Joe Mazzulla. I think he's a psycho. I just love that he's, like he perfectly planned like how to rob a bank, like and just like went through that like piece by piece with the Boston media, and like I think but the work ethic that he instills, I think was a lot of fun. But I think like in terms of like like the how my week unfolds, it's definitely football, and I'm glad that they're relevant again.
I think they are going to be relevant, and I did see that they're favored in the majority of games. I mean, some of it appears that, and you never know, but it appears that we have a very favorable schedule this year. We avoid, for once, we're not playing the Chiefs in the regular season. We have to play Buffalo twice because they're in the division, but we
No, they could
avoid a
lose
lot
like
of the best
last
teams.
year if it means a pick. Like I cannot believe. I still
Oh,
am not over the fact that like we won that game. What was his name? Joe Mix.
oh, Joe Milton.
Jim Milton. Yeah. So
Oh,
He was balling out, and people were like, they were putting their third string in there. It's like, keep going, guys. I could not believe we won that game. I was so pissed about.
I was very upset. I
I don't
mean,
know if like you're like me, like when like something goes wrong with sports, I can't even look at like my phone for like a solid 3 days. I
oh
just have
yeah.
to like, get it out. I just can't even look at all media. Like that's probably why I look at political stuff after that. It's just a distraction of like I cannot look that like Jason like and Tatum like blew his Achilles. Like I peaked, like after he got surgery, but like yeah, it's just like it takes a week out of me. And the same with when they secured the fourth pick instead of the first. Like that was really frustrating. But it seems like the team, picked a good draft. Like we'll get some players, even if that one guy has the shorter arms. Then
Yeah,
you
I've
should
never heard
be
of a guy, Campbell, who I've never heard of more about somebody's arms
it's like an
being
inch. Yeah, it's an
an
inch.
inch too short.
Yeah. But that's what like I was a rower, and so like you can do a lot of things with like being a rower, different body types, mostly because there's no money in it. Like if there was money in it, you would have the best of the best. And so like with football, like it's probably like just imagine all the people that you know who play football and all the people that like were good at football, and then imagine those people not even like holding a candle to like NFL players. And so like I think like it's just there's so many things, and so those little variables added up, like are usually an indicator. But like, I hope he's good. I hope like I love the attitude. Love like he's a guy that seems like he's gonna fit right in and very bold. Like putting on pads, going out there, like playing with the guys. Like my God, like I'm just gonna just eating that right up. Like
Oh,
I can't get enough of
one of the things that made me realize that time marches on is
that.
my kids who are almost 22 and almost 20. So they were born in '03 and '05. So all they've known, and Sandy, my wife Sandy, is a lifelong Chiefs fan. She's from the Kansas City area. So all my kids know is mom or dad's team is winning the Super Bowl
Yeah.
every year because it was the perfect handoff from the Patriots to the Chiefs, pretty much.
Well, good for Sandy, like not getting sucked in. There was some lean years for the Chiefs when she was here in New England, and
Oh yeah.
Lori, like she can get behind the Celtics a little bit because like she grew up in Southern Virginia. There's no real team for her down there. She can get a little really likes the Bruins. Dislikes the Patriots. Like thinks that like like just like it's not like America's team. Like like she's and so I'm always proud that she's definitely not rooting for the Patriots and hasn't been sucked into like the idea that like she's a Pats fan. She's like maybe the second dynasty will be different, but like it is like she's not like Tiernan, my daughter will ask, why aren't you a Patriots fan? She's like, well, I didn't grow up in New England, and Tom Brady's on to his third wife, so like I'm not into any of that. So like
I
that's
realized
yeah,
like when they were at the peak and I would go to Kansas City, throughout all the century, we got married in '01, and we'd go to a restaurant and I did not wear Patriots gear. I don't wear a lot of it out, out anyway, but if I was not going to get myself in a bad place at a barbecue place, in downtown Kansas City. And there was this one time we went and the Raiders were coming to Kansas City the next day. It was a Saturday night. This is peak Patriots time, winning every year kind of thing. And Raiders fans are getting extremely aggressive
oh
at the
yes,
Chiefs fans. And at this barbecue place, it wasn't quite 50-50, but a third of the restaurant was wearing the silver and black of the Raiders. And I came in, it was very cold. I came in with a Patriots winter hat. That's it.
yeah.
I didn't have any other gear on. And the Raiders, I'm like, we're not even in the West. We're in Kansas City. Neither of us, I'm not even playing you guys this week.
Yeah.
And that
Man.
is the
It's
closest I feel like I've come to somebody physically accosting me because of Patriots
so
gear on. But that's the Raider Nation right there.
the Raider Nation. I went to Cal, and I think and so that's out in the Bay Area, right next to Oakland. Lived in Oakland for a little bit. I was there for the tuck roll, the snow game. And I was
No.
running around outside, and I might have been inviting a little too much because I don't remember all the details of the story. And don't check the date. I think I was 21. The My buddies had to like keep me from like getting my head stomped in by some people that were, Oakland natives that maybe didn't appreciate, this guy with a Ben Coates jersey running around, because
Oh no.
that's the only jersey I had, just running around like, who's Technicolor Dreamcoats? Wasn't even on the team.
Oh,
But I was really excited. But the grace of God survived the night, and
you
that was
survived. You didn't get beat up. Sandy, every time she goes to Kansas City, she's going again next week. She purchases at Hy-Vee, which is sort of the big
oh,
chain out there, kind of like you mentioned, Wegmans in
yeah,
like upstate New York and all. Hy-Vee, and she brings home a couple more Chiefs reusable grocery bags. So then we'll go grocery shopping here locally, Hannaford's or something, Portsmouth or Hampton or something. And I go in and I just grab the bag full of the other bags, reusable, right?
yeah,
So I go in, I'm by myself this couple months ago. It's except for the bag itself that I carried in, which was a Hannaford's brand bag. There were 5 Chiefs bags in it, all with Kelsey and Mahomes and stuff. And I go in, I go to pay, and I realize what I've done.
oh,
I throw the F bomb out, and I swear to God, the woman bagging, she told me to go. Basically, she told me to go F myself.
yeah,
She's like,
yeah.
"Oh, so Chiefs fan, huh?" I'm like, "I'm
That,
totally not."
yeah.
And she's like, "Well,
Help to
then why do you
explain
have
that.
that?" I'm like,
Yeah,
"We're seriously doing this?"
yeah. Yeah, well, hey, I think hopefully sports can be more important, so that we don't turn our politics into a team, based sport. Like I will dislike the Chiefs yeah, I was not rooting for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Like somehow I have to protect Tom Brady's legacy. I don't know why I have to,
I'm with you.
but by
Oh my
but
God,
by
when
rooting him, but like,
Brady beat the Chiefs when he was on the Buccaneers,
oh yeah,
and Sandy was like, obviously, go Chiefs is a really big deal. We're trying to get the ring, the second ring at the time, and I'm secretly like, obviously, I want my boy to pick up the seventh ring. If it's not going to
yeah,
be my team, I want my boy to get it,
yeah.
and it's going to take going through Kansas City to do it. And there was something delicious, to be honest, about not only was Mahomes not going to close the gap actually was getting wider.
Yeah.
Unreal.
I didn't have like many, like, I guess like I'm not as nervous, but I was still like, oh man, like hearing all the talk of like, oh, Mahomes is the GOAT. He's going to take over Brady. And again, like, you know, a lot of normal people would think like we're crazy people for actually thinking about that. But like, that's like where my head was going into the entire 2 weeks of the Super Bowl was just like, all right,
100%. Oh,
gotta,
I
gotta
mean, I'm
protect
trying
the
to
boy.
argue to Sandy that what what Mahomes or any quarterback does up to age 30 is important, but what really makes Brady the greatest is kind of what happened after age 30. I mean, frankly, from age 40 on, he was elite for another 5 years.
Yeah.
Like it's what Mahomes is going to do for the next 10 plus years. It's going to really determine whether or not he can keep up. Not what he's done,
Steve,
which
I,
is
I
getting
bet you
one.
don't. I bet you don't stretch though. That's the secret to Brady. He was stretching. It's like an older guy now. I'm an older guy. You got
Oh,
to stretch.
oh yeah, I'm stretching now. I
You,
think of
you
Brady.
got,
I'm
yeah,
like,
Alex Guerrero there. He was just, that was
oh yeah, I
just
need the special
liability,
stuff apparently there.
the
Yeah.
special stuff.
Well, anyway,
All right,
we are
man.
past the hour mark, and we could do this all day, but
Good. Yeah.
we'll
Got
do
some.
it again. And I
Appreciate it.
really appreciate you taking time. And we crawled up what we're going to do for folks watching. You can watch the whole thing. We'll have it recorded. I'll send it out via email later today. But it's always fun to do it live. Like Bill O'Reilly said once, we'll do
Do
it
it live.
live,
Yeah.
but without the all the swear words.
I
And
swear a
it's
little
always a
bit. I
pleasure
didn't know
doing
if
this in
this is going
private.
to get you dinged on the FEC or if it hits engagement. So I cut out like the majority of the swears I would have said. So,
You did
uh,
very well on that. I could tell.
all right.
You restrained yourself very
Yeah.
well. Save it for the meetings.
All right.
Anyway, great to see you, Deaglan. Deaglan McEachern, folks, a real talent in the state, not just a Portsmouth guy. This guy has the statewide talent. I'd love to see someday take it there. But that's just me throwing my 2 cents in gratuitously at the end.
Well,
All
I'm
right.
glad you pronounced my name correctly, Steve. It's always nice to be on a show that knows how to pronounce my name. So appreciate you doing it, and thanks for doing all this. I think it's been fun watching your newsletters and just the filling a gap that we have here, and getting people excited and engaged is, I'm always a fan of people that are doing that. So appreciate you doing the hard work of that. And again, happy to go if I can get on the invite to the sports podcast. That's where I think I'd really shine. That's
We'll get you on. We're going to do that. We're going to blend the two worlds together. That's how Democrats are going to take over the world. But in the near term, it's how we're going to have more fun talking sports too.
Sounds good, brother.
Thanks. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.